are now on. Great.
And I didn't fall for it.
I'd like to call to order the Monday, February 11th, 2019 regular meeting of the Littleton Planning Commission. Welcome all. Could we have our roll call, please?
Commissioner Reynolds.
Here.
Commissioner Schwartzbacher. Here. Commissioner Stallman.
Here.
Chair Rudnicki.
Here.
Commissioner Bull.
Here.
Commissioner Breidenbaugh.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Almond. Here. And Commissioner Coronado.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay. We do have a complete group this evening. Also want to officially, you've gone up and shake some hands, but officially welcome Jennifer Henginger. Is that how you pronounce your last name? Welcome aboard, and you're coming at a time when we've got a lot of work to do this coming year. So good luck, roll up your sleeves, and be a lot of evening meetings. Let's see, approval of the agenda is up next. Any changes? Seeing none. Minutes to be approved. You all had a chance to read them or look at it on the city's website. Do I have a motion for approval?
I move to approve, based on the recording secretary's certification, the January 14, 2019 action minutes for the January 14, 2019 regular meeting of the Littleton Planning Commission.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? Please vote. You want to say something?
I was just I wasn't at the meeting, and to be honest, I hadn't had a chance to review the minutes, the video yet, so I was going to abstain, just if that's acceptable.
Yes.
Okay.
You were there, right? You were sub, so you can.
There you go.
You'll have to do an aye, I guess. Please vote.
All right, so it's unanimous with Commissioner Stallman abstaining.
And Craig, what's your vote?
Thank you.
Okay.
Noted.
Thank you. Next item is public comment. This is a public comment for general business or non-agenda related items. You'll have 3 minutes to speak. We expect the discourse to be civil. Please give your name, your address, or your district number. You'll have, like say, 3 minutes to speak. When you have 30 seconds left, Denise will be holding up that yellow card. When you're 3 minutes up, she'll be holding up the red card. We have nobody that has signed up to speak. Is there anybody that wishes to make comments?
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here in District 1. So I had some comments, observations about the meeting last week. The P4 process for the parcel that is at the northwest corner of the Norgren property was a rezoning. It was not coded that way, and it was not presented that way. And did City Council not pass the P4 expansion to rezoning until Tuesday? Because if so, that would mean that the P4 for rezoning that Planning Commission did would not have been technically correct. I'm going to point out that that's a result of a confabulation in the way that staff categorizes projects, and they categorize them by the step in the process. So projects come in and they're categorized as a P4. That's not appropriate. Projects should be categorized by what the action is for the city. And then if there's a step in the process that staff feels is important to record or keep in the numbering of that project, then that can be added. But you don't, you've got to include the action of what's being requested of the city, and that's a rezoning in that case. It's not a P4. That's not what would be done. It's a rezoning. And Jeannie Erickson pointed that out to City Council. So we do have an administrative thing that I hope you folks will keep track of. Another thing that bothered me was that Commissioner Almond made the comment in the city she came from that they considered the impact on city budgets of changing projects or parcels, property, from income-producing property to revenue expending property, residential. And she was shut down by the chair. Now, a couple of things are wrong with that. I need you, and everybody in the city needs you to consider the impact on the budget when rezoning is done. And there are tools to do this by land use and square footage. You could project how much is revenue coming in and how much is expenditure going out. So that should be part of all of these, and the city should bring that to us. Second of all, the chair's job is to make sure the conduct of the meeting goes well. It is not to suppress the comment of a commissioner. And I hope all of you continue to bring your comments forward and support each other in making them, because that's your job. So this is from 2013, and it points out all these projects that were rezonings from commercial property to residential. And we've been doing that ever since, and that's bad for us. So I'd like to ask you to please add that to your deliberations. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll move on. Public hearing is next. PC Resolution 003, 2019, resolution to amend the Broadway County Line Commercial Center Plan Development, AutoNation Ford, entitled the Sixth Amendment to Broadway County Line Commercial Center PD. First up, we'll go through the drill as to who has visited the site and have you spoken to anyone. We'll start with Dan.
Excuse me. I did not visit the site this weekend, but I have driven by it several times, and I did not speak to anybody.
Similarly, I've driven by it many times, but I did not visit it in relation to this PC resolution or talk to anybody about it.
I as well drive by the site quite a bit, but did not, I don't think I've driven by in the last several days, and not for reasons of, for this meeting anyway.
Okay. I've driven by it many times, and Sunday I did visit the site and drive inside the lot. Did not speak to anyone.
I've been on the site previously. I've driven by it frequently, and I have not spoken to anyone concerning this particular topic.
I did go by the site. I did not talk to anyone.
I drove by the site on Saturday, didn't talk to anyone.
I've been by the site many times, but have not talked to anybody about this application.
I've also been by the site many times and did not speak to anyone.
Okay. Thank you. So can we have a staff report, please?
Absolutely. Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Carl Onsager. I'm planner and presenting on behalf of community development in the city. We are looking at the Sixth Amendment to the Broadway County Line Commercial Center PD for protective shade canopies or hail canopies, as they are commonly referred to.
Could you speak directly into the microphone, please?
Sorry.
Closer.
The request for Planning Commission action tonight is to consider the amendment to the Plan Development Plan, which would allow these hail canopy structures. An overview of the presentation. First, we'll start with the process of how we got here, the application details, review, criteria, and analysis, staff recommendation, and then commission action.
Just a comment, do we not have our video for up front to see?
Is it not presenting on the front monitor?
It's not on the television.
Is that what you were? Sorry, I didn't understand.
No, no worries.
Thank you.
Okay, excellent. So the application was received by the city and reviewed by staff and then brought before Planning Commission. Your role tonight is to make a recommendation to City Council, and then City Council will review and make their decision. The site is located at Broadway and County Line at 8252 South Broadway, is approximately 12.386 acres and zone PDC. This application does not change that zoning designation. The current use is an auto dealership and is a permitted use per that PDC plan. It also allows, in subsequent amendments, for parking and display vehicle setbacks, and this current amendment seeks to add hail canopies as an allowed structure. The areas, so the hail canopies cannot meet established parking and vehicle setbacks, and the blue on the screen denotes where the hail canopies are proposed, and the red denotes the designated display vehicle areas as called out in the 3rd and 5th PD amendments, and no hail canopies are proposed to extend into those areas. The PD amendment does not change the gross floor area of 0.25 to 1 on the site, does not amend the max building height of 36 feet, does propose a max limit to coverage by the hail canopies. The hail canopies are 15 feet max in height, and the building setbacks are 25 feet to the front, rear 5 feet, side 10 feet. And the parking setbacks are as restrictive, if not more restrictive, than those building setbacks. Further, the PD calls out design standards from the for those hail canopies. These were borrowed and revised from the City of Commerce, or Centennial. So there's no extension into parking setbacks. They are not allowed in designated display vehicle areas. The max height is 15 feet. They are not counted as gross floor area, and part of this is because there is no walls or kind of extensions of that structure because of their cantilevered nature. They are cantilevered in design. There's no allowed signage or lighting attached to the structures. And then if there's a residential property adjacent, there's an additional requirement for landscape screening. However, there is not currently any residential property adjacent to the proposed site. And then the design standards also put forth limits on of color and solar reflexivity. So, like I said, Centennial has regulations around these, and so I've picked out 2 sites to add some additional context. So this is the AutoNation Toyota in Centennial off of Arapahoe Road. And I'll point to, there's a little orange piece that kind of shows where the photo was taken on the site map. So this is an example of those canopies on the site. This is a picture of those canopies using Google Street View from the north view or west view from Arapahoe Road, and again from Arapahoe Road. And this is further canopies on the north side of the site, which does, while the residential structures are set back quite a ways, that does abut residential structures. Okay. And another from the corner. The site is close as Larry Miller Nissan in Centennial. Again, a look from the north side. And then again, angled from the north side. And then some additional photos of the current property with the proposed locations. Again, the little orange area on the side indicates where the photo was taken. And this is a point of reference from the area where the canopies will not be allowed.
Thanks, Pam.
A nice welcome to Littleton sign. The site does have some geography that I think also adds to the, lessens the impact potentially of these canopies. All these photos were also taken from the sidewalk. Okay. This is a area that canopies are not designated for. And finally, they do propose canopies in the parking area. This is not part of the other PD amendment that Planning Commission considered for the off-site parking. And no hail canopies are proposed for that site. Okay. So in review, the hail canopies are proposed to respond to increased severe weather events that have damaged inventory and have greatly increased the premiums for car dealerships in the area. Staff has analyzed and believes that it meets the contemporary needs of the community, and is of our opinion that the established hail canopies add to the development and design of the site based on those parking setbacks, and if there are any residential adjacent to the property, then the increased landscape buffer will also lessen any visual impacts. Based on those criteria, staff recommends approval of the PD amendment. And commission action is to either approve with conditions, deny, or continue to a date certain. I welcome any questions you may have.
Okay. Questions of a technical nature of staff? Anybody can start. Well, you'll be anybody, Jason. Go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
Thanks, Carl, for adding all those pictures. I really appreciate that. I found that extremely helpful. So it seems like Littleton doesn't have its own recipe for this right now. Is that why you pulled over from Centennial?
Correct. We have actually also had a site development plan, which even after the PD amendment, the site would require, before the installation of any canopies, would require a site development plan. When advising or when talking with applicants, and there was a dealership with approved hail canopies, we deferred to Centennial and said, please review these. It will make our jobs slightly easier when reviewing these. So we do defer in this case to the existing Centennial regulations.
Can you answer why the cantilever style was chosen? I'm sure it has specific benefits.
I believe the applicants could address that further, but
Sure.
Based on the parking nature, I can imagine having 4 posts increases the chance of, in a traditional tent structure, would increase the chance of collisions with those posts, damage the longevity of the structures, and also damage the inventory in which they're trying to protect. So I believe that cantilever, that's probably why.
Well, maybe this will be for them too, but the 15-foot versus, is that to make it more structurally, I don't think the word sound, but why was 15 feet chosen for being the maximum height?
I imagine it's for kind of the slope up to that point, also to allow enough clearance while bringing that slope to the point where drainage and certain aspects like that aren't hindered. So I imagine it's just a design issue with the those.
And also curious, so it says there is no restriction over the overall lot coverage as a percentage. What was the thought process behind that?
So there was actually a restriction on lot percentage, and that was one that the applicant put on their plan. So they're proposing this percentage per that PD plan, so I imagine a SDP would match that.
Yes, but in the, if you look at the qualifications to do this, it said that there would not be a restriction. I recognize that they have put a restriction on there, but overall for Littleton, according to that, there would not necessarily be a restriction.
I believe that's for gross floor area. And that's the distance. So there's a restriction on the percentage of lot coverage for these, but based on their design, it is determined, and that's actually in the those design standards in Centennial, that they don't count against a gross floor area.
Right, but we're Littleton, and I'm just curious if we would, at any point, would that be something we'd want to take a look at as a, you know, as a city? Do we really want to say it's unrestricted, how much we can cover, how much we can use these cantilevered hill canopies? Just a thought for the future, because I appreciate, of course, that they put down their 21%, as this showed, but just for as Littleton.
We would welcome the direction were that to come forward with direction from Planning Commission and actual regulation in that.
Maybe council. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce?
I'll ask, a couple questions. One matter of procedural issue first. The citizen was kind enough to shut the door because there was noise in the hallway, but it's my understanding that if we're a public meeting, we need to have a door open at some point. I don't know if it's still noisy out there or if we want to open a door to the community room, but I had understood that we needed to have a door open if we were a public meeting.
Let's open the door. Thank you.
Okay.
Is that true?
In all honesty, I'm not sure, but it is a public nature meeting, so I would assume if the doors were closed, it kind of makes people think that they can't be in here. So.
Right. I've seen this before in the past where we've had meetings and the doors are required to be.
I'll look into that policy because I wasn't aware of that, but I'll look into that.
Okay. All right. Couple quick questions regarding the technical nature of the application. What's the distance? Give me your best estimate as to the distance to the residential neighborhood to the east. And part of it is there's an elevation gain. I know Oak Brook sits up and can look down on this. Do we have any concerns about this?
So the distance is covered between another shopping center, just directly to the east of this. And based on the public hearing notice, it's about 600 or so feet to that residential area.
Okay.
And the 700-foot buffer encompasses a few of those.
And I noted the application talks about, relatively muted colors and no signage and so forth and so on. So it doesn't strike me as being something that would force the eye to look at this from an elevated position, which I thought was appropriate. I wanted to ask, based on the experience, and maybe this is an applicant response, as Robin was suggesting, but how effective are these things? If we're going to approve them, what's been the performance standards? And sort of more to the point, do we have any sort of conditional response that if for some reason they were to be damaged, they have to be repaired in a prompt manner? I didn't see that in the application, but it seems like that would be, and maybe it's something they would do normally because they want the protection, but I'll let you or them answer.
There is actually, and I should have noted that in the presentation as well, but on the PD plan in those design standards does call for the replacement were those canopies ever damaged, or wear and tear also, so if they ever look dingy.
Perfect. Okay, good. Yeah, I missed that. The last question I've got is that I assume there's no incremental drainage issue from the standpoint of the tents or the canopies sort of directing more water in a certain manner. I mean, if you get a deluge, it's going to come down and it's non-permeable surface anyway because you've got asphalt and whatnot. But does anybody have any drainage issues associated with these?
So again, another applicant had this reviewed through site development plan and engineering, didn't find any issues with that. The canopies themselves, from my understanding, is they are not 100% impervious themselves.
Okay.
So they do allow moisture and things to go through, but it does prevent hail and kind of larger things other than droplets of water. So that also mitigates concerns around drainage.
Okay, thanks much.
David?
Do we know, I suppose that, given that AutoNation already has canopies in other locations, that these will be very similar, sort of look similar to the ones that we've seen pictures of?
Mhm.
Is that fair?
That is correct, yes.
Did anybody look into, I suppose it's probably minor, but, there's, in any urban area, there's sort of a heat island effect where asphalt all over the place causes higher temperatures in general. These lighter colored canopies, it seems to me that they might be a good thing just in that they reflect more sunlight and the asphalt, would generally absorb less heat that way and sort of mitigate that effect. I know this is a small area and, as a percentage of Littleton as a whole, but I don't suppose anybody looks at that sort of thing.
So the design standards do have certain conditions for solar reflectivity. So I imagine it probably has some benefit, but there's nothing that I've studied on that specifically.
Okay, and did you mention what the canopy materials are made of? Is there a list of acceptable material?
I believe it's a nylon. The applicant, again, would also, but I believe that's in those detailed design standards on the plan.
But it's not rigid, it's flexible.
Correct.
Okay, that's it for now, I guess.
On the public comment pages from Commercial Building Services, on the second page, it said one of the nearby residents said he'd like to see smaller cars parked in the southeast corner. Could you point out in the site plan view what that resident is talking about, where he wants smaller cars point?
Indeed, and I apologize. I believe that is was directed at the other PD because they kind of did their public meetings concurrently. I don't believe there were any concerns regarding the solar canopies or the protective canopies. That was related to that off-site parking.
But where was that comment directed at? Can you point that out onto the map? That one.
Yeah, so I believe, again, that the off-site is about 300 feet to the far
Over here.
It may not even be on there.
northeast.
It's not even on that.
It's not on this plan, I believe
Okay.
is what they were referencing.
This was a previous meeting that we had last year, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks for clarifying. I was thinking that they had a resident with a view plane across this site somewhere, and that was
I apologize for the confusion.
Okay, thank you, that's my only question.
That was, I had a similar comment, just trying to understand the public outreach, and it looks like it was mentioned on that seventh bullet point there. This is page 47 of 51 of our packet, where it sounds like they did bring up those hail tents, and it doesn't look like there was any opposition to those at the time. Yeah, I think staff's presentation has answered several of my questions, so I have no further questions.
Great.
Thank you.
Yep.
I think you mentioned in your presentation additional landscape buffer. Is there proposed additional landscaping along the edge with these, or?
Not at this time. That would only be triggered if there were adjacent residential properties, which there are not right now. But if any of the other surrounding properties were to develop as residential, then that additional landscape buffer would come into play.
And I assume that if the engineers have reviewed this, that snow loading is not an issue with these?
Was not a concern at the other site.
And then the other question, this may be for the applicant, is there going to be any impact on the lighting of the lots? Given that there's going to be all these canopies out there, they're going to have to change the lighting at all?
So the other design standard that was not mentioned, the packet, but it is on the PD plan amendment, calls that they can't interfere with lighting on the site, I believe.
Okay. Thank you.
Jerry?
I have no additional questions.
Okay. Let's see. This is a PD, so PD makes its own rules, approved by Planning Commission and Council. But I'm asking, for the city in general, what are the regulations for canopies, if any?
So right now, they cannot extend into any building setback, and because this PD for this site had additional parking setbacks, we felt it was appropriate that they shouldn't expand past those parking setbacks. Other than those, we've, for the one and only one other site development plan that we've received for hail canopies, again, we have deferred to Centennial's regulations to assist in our review of those, as we also compare these against city regulations and the Littleton City Code. So
Noticed in the residential district, like R1, you can't put a canopy in the front setback.
I will let the building division, when they look at a single-family home hail canopy, make that determination. No, sorry for being flippant, but no, all of them have been in commercial zones so far.
Right. And basically, they're conforming to Littleton's code because there are no provisions in the Littleton code for canopies, basically.
That is correct.
Okay. And I have the same comment that you have. This is Centennial's regulations, so what? This is Littleton. In the hail canopy design standards, number 8 and 9, there's a problem between 8 and 9. I'll quote halfway down number 8. No materials or items shall be permitted to be attached to the hail canopy, including but not limited to the attachment of lights, panels, flags, balloons, banners, or any other device. So I underline lights are not permitted to be attached. Next item down, it talks about any lighting integrated within the hail canopy shall be designed to direct light in a downcast manner only and shall be installed and maintained in conformance with the PD. So basically, number 8 says no lighting, and number 9 says integral lighting is fine. So what is it? To me, none of these canopies should be lighted in any manner whatsoever, whether it be integral or attached. Did the city go over this, or did the city just copy this from Centennial?
That is an oversight on my part, and I will take responsibility for that. I will go back and make sure that the lighting in future any applications are consistent and not mutually exclusive, as this appears to be.
What would be the city's position? To not allow any lighting whatsoever?
No lighting would be allowed. And upon my initial review, that is what my impression of those design standards were. And I apologize if I misread those.
Well, it'll be an amendment here to the main motion. I think that's, yeah, I'll let the rest go for other comments. Any other technical questions? Seeing none, applicant wish to make a presentation.
Good afternoon, staff. My name is Zach Thomas. I'm from 8505 Chancellor Row in Dallas, Texas. I'm representing a company called VPS, initialed for Vehicle Protection Structures. So we just wanted to give you a little background about our company. We do have some other projects in the Denver Metroplex. We do all types of projects from small mom and pop dealerships to automotive manufacturers all around the world. Our company does everything from the engineering to the fabrication to the installation, so we're completely turnkey. We design these things, we stamp them from our engineers, Colorado engineers. So no worries about engineering. Everything is designed to the local building code, snow load, wind load, everything. Just a little background about the company. We started in Texas. Just like you guys, we have significant hail events that have damaged, hundreds of cars. AutoNation has tasked us to kind of react to the storms that you guys have been having the past couple of years. I'm sure you're aware. This product, the efficacy of it is shown by the risk management department of AutoNation continuing to trust us with installing these projects in their dealerships. One of the comments was from you guys earlier were, what's the efficacy? Do we actually see savings from storms? So just a quick data from last year's storm in Golden, Colorado. Vehicles that were underneath tents had about $800 worth of damage. Vehicles that were not had about $4,500 of damage. So the efficacy is there. And not only that, but most of these insurers are simply not allowing insurance to happen on these open lot dealerships anymore just because the numbers don't make sense. Just to give you kind of a sample portfolio of projects that we've installed in Colorado. Thank you, Carl, for showing these earlier. This is Toyota Arapahoe, just a couple quick aerials. The Nissan Arapahoe location. As you can see, this was actually during the installation, but we've loaded these things. We have multiple storms since these have been installed. We've never had a failure. You'll see the snow on top of them when they're installed here, and the dealerships like them because they don't have to plow those areas anymore. They kind of hold it until it melts, and then another comment that you guys mentioned was the drainage. The fabric is permeable, so that water will drip down. On the other hand, most of the water will drip off the fabric. It is a hip-style roof, so similar to a house, so it won't affect the drainage in the area.
Could you go back 2 photos, please?
Sir?
Hold that for a minute. Thank you.
So this is Dodge Ram Arapahoe. All these are on Centennial, Colorado. That's where we got our start here in Colorado. Subaru Arapahoe, Dodge Ram, another picture during installation. This is Chevy North Denver. We do have different colors. They decided to go with the blue for the Chevy brand. However, we will be going and abiding with the silver here. It's a little more unobtrusive and kind of matches the Ford brand a little better. This is in Golden, Colorado. They chose to go with the desert sand, kind of meshes in with the mountains around the area. And just to give you an idea of how big our company is and the kind of projects that we've been able to accomplish, this is the General Motors facility in Ramos Arizpe, Mexico. We're literally covered 1.5 million square feet here. This covers all the plant's inventory that comes out and is directly put into their train system. We just finished this one. It's BMW Spartanburg in South Carolina. So we just wanted to show you, we do large projects with large companies, and we stand behind our product. These types of companies wouldn't continue to do business with us if they didn't feel like our product worked, and if we weren't an ethical company, and we pride ourselves on that. It's another one in Alabama, Smyrna, Tennessee. Thank you, and open for questions.
Questions for the applicant? start down here.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Nor do I.
No questions.
I do. So on the interior of the dealership here, there's a lot of trees. Are those going to be allowed to stay? I know in the applicant material it said that no changes to landscaping, but when you look at some of these, they're just huge blocks. Are the trees staying? Not just the up front, but interior?
No, we're not cutting any trees down. We actually can put a small hole in the fabric to go right around the trees. Obviously, it's not going to corral it. It's a larger hole, so it will not affect anything. We do not want to cut down any trees.
I mean, the trees completely block County Line, so you really wouldn't see much of this off of County Line. But on Broadway, the dealership goes up a hill. You're going to be seeing these. Is there any thought of putting trees there just to make it a little nicer to look at?
I don't think AutoNation would be opposed to that at all.
No more.
What's the project timeline on this? When you start, when, and how long does it take to complete this project?
So for this project, it is fairly large. Once we hopefully get approval from you guys, approved building permit, be about 4 to 5 weeks of fabrication time, and then probably 4 to 6 weeks of installation time.
Okay, all right. And are you folks privately held or publicly held?
Privately held.
Privately held?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And this is really, I mean, AutoNation is contracting with you guys. Your status doesn't, I mean, you're stepping up and giving us an indication that you have the capability to do the project, but really this is between you and them, subject to the issuance of the building permits and whatever our standards are for that. So, okay. All right. Thanks much.
Dude?
What's the longevity of these canopies?
So the steel is a structural steel. It's going to last, forever. The warranty is 10 years. The fabric material, and let me just kind of correct Carl on that. It's not a nylon. It's a knitted HDPE fabric. It's plastic, very durable. It's not something that a hailstone is going to penetrate. It is permeable. So like we talked about drainage before, we tell our clients, similar to a roof, to replace it every 10 to 12 years. After that, after 10 to 12 years, the HDPE gets hit with the UV rays and kind of not disintegrates, but weakens. You're not going to see any holes in it, but if a hailstorm did come through, it might penetrate because the HDPE was weaker. So one of the things is the insurers basically demand the dealership to replace it every 8 to 10 years in order to keep any kind of discount they receive from installing these canopies.
Okay. And is there a warranty on the canopies as well, the actual cover, the HDP?
The fabric?
Yeah.
Yeah, 8 to 10 years.
That's the warranty on it?
Yes, sir.
So if it fails within 8 years, then, or like say 6 years, then you guys replace it?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And then do you guys do the replacing?
Yes. Yeah, we'll do everything.
If one canopy gets damaged, then you guys come back and you'll replace the.
Yeah, so every one of these bays, particularly in Colorado because of the snow load, we can only go 3 parking spaces between support columns. So every bay is modular, so it's easy to take one, put it out, put a new one in. We have our own fabrication shops. We make every single thing on this canopy, so we don't have to sub it out to anybody. It's completely on us, and we always are true to our word on our warranty.
Okay. Guess that's it.
Bruce wanted to sneak in an extra question.
Uh-oh. Well, no, if you guys want to go ahead first, I can.
Bogart, you're in. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Bruce.
Sorry.
When you replace a canopy or a panel, I guess I want to make sure that these things are being disposed of in an effective, non-hazardous manner. What's your process for removing them? Where do they go?
They would go to any authorized waste facility that we have here. We contract with a lot of them. We understand in Colorado that we have to pay certain fees for all that stuff, so it would go to a waste here and locally.
Okay, so this isn't, you said it was nylon kind of fabric, which isn't toxic in any sense?
No, it's a HDPE plastic, so just like a toy maybe your child would have. It's made out of the same type of plastic, just in a little different format.
Okay, thanks.
Along with some lines, is it recyclable, the material?
Yeah, I mean, we do, just like you were saying, we do sometimes recycle it, but I guess I wouldn't, personally, I don't know, I guess. Apologize.
The foundation for the steel supports, are those going to be on piers, drilled piers?
Yes, sir. They're very robust drilled piers. Depending on what kind of geotechnical report we have, it could be 10 to 12 feet deep, drilled piers.
What, you'll like have 4 bolts on top and?
Yes. So actually, in Colorado, we have to do 8.
8 bolts?
So 8 anchor bolts attached to the column, and then everything's bolted up. There's no field welding. It goes up pretty quick. Every single piece is custom made to the site and the building code.
And then I take it there's kind of a lattice work underneath the fabric.
Sorry, can you say that
There's
again?
kind of a lattice work of metal underneath
Yes,
the fabric.
yes. Just a hip-style frame. Helps
Framework.
with the drainage and the snow load up here.
Thank you.
Similar question to Rob, and yeah, just be curious to know what impacts to the existing landscape and trees, if any will be replaced or have to be moved, or is there a game plan for that, or?
Yeah, I mean, anytime that we've had any tree conflicts up here, we know there's stringent rules for any type of demolition and relocation of trees. So we do a site survey prior to ever coming on site, and we know exactly where the column locations are going to go. Every single structure is 3D modeled along with the trees, so we can kind of see where they're going to lie. At the most, we might have to trim some, but we've never removed a tree up here in Colorado. And in Texas, for that fact. We have very strict rules in Austin, other municipalities like that. If you take one out, I mean, it's a whole permit process. You have to replace it with 4 to 5. So that's not something that's part of this plan.
I have no further questions.
Well, I have a number of concerns, but 2 that concern you. First one has already been spoken to twice, the landscaping. This is one of the better parking lots I've seen. Mature trees, small but mature. It's a very nice parking lot. It was obviously done with more modern standards versus some of the auto dealerships further to the north. So caution you to, maybe you'll go out and take a picture of every tree, so make sure you don't take any of them down.
Sure.
Second item, and I'll be proposing an amendment onto this, and I know you just represent the owner, you're not the owner, and that is the canopies that are along Broadway north of the westerly entry into the parking area. That would be area 4A. I would propose that, get your comment on it, that canopies be not allowed in that single row that is on the edge of the west side of that area. They are looming over Broadway. They should not be there. So, any comments?
My comment would be that AutoNation wants to be part of this community, and if that's all we need to do to, have support from you guys, I don't think that would be a game killer.
Okay. Any other questions of the applicant? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
You'll have a chance for additional comments after public comment. Okay.
Thank you.
So we'll open it up to public comment. Again, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Expect the discourse to be civil. Please state your name, your district, or how far away you live from our location. When you have 30 seconds left, the yellow card will be held up. When your 3 minutes are up, the red card will be held up. And We have a sign-up sheet coming. And once again, no names. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this matter? Pam?
My name is Pam Chadbourne. I live a block and a half from here. So a couple of thoughts. I think protecting cars for sale from hail is really good. When my car quit and I was looking for cars, there had been hailstorms and a whole bunch of cars had been removed from being for sale. That was hard to look for a car. So I believe in protecting cars. But I appreciate your concern about, let's say, precedent. And notice that we have car dealerships up and down Broadway. And I'm concerned about what this would mean. And the other thing I wanted to see was a picture at night. It kind of looked like there were lights up there, and then there's a bunch of tents, and it says low reflectivity, but what does that look like? Lighting at night is really important. Glare upward is bad and should be prevented. I really want to understand the way these work at night with lights. Yeah, to me, that still needs to be understood. And so thanks for your consideration of this.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll adjourn the public comment portion. Applicant wish to make any other comments?
So my comment for that would be, in situations where we don't have lights under the canopies, just like every other SDP in y'all's community, you have high mast lights that are out there. They have to conform to the existing photometric plan. A lot of time, and we have pictures and all that, we can show you that the light does diffuse through the canopies. Obviously not at 100%, but you still will be able to see the cars underneath. And if lighting was an issue, again, AutoNation would be willing to add that to the scope, despite the fact that I realize it's not on the design guidelines. But if that is an issue internally, we can address that.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion, discussion.
Okay. Attempt a motion. I can attempt a motion. Took some notes. Move to approve to adopt PC Resolution 03-2019, recommending council approval of the Sixth Amendment to the Broadway County Line Commercial Center Plan Development with the following conditions. 1, the plan shall remove the first row of canopies along Broadway from the entry drive north to Broadway Court. Condition 2, in the design standards, number 8, change the last sentence to read, in addition, no materials or items shall be permitted to be attached to the hail canopy, including but not limited to the attachment of lights not authorized by a site or photometric plan, panels, flags, balloons, banners, or any other device.
What about, did that handle the integral lighting to the canopies?
Right. My read on the integral lighting number 9 is that could be authorized if someone goes through a photometric plan and it meets all the requirements of Littleton's illumination code.
Okay.
So I'm trying to remove the conflict between 8 and 9.
I'll second the motion as presented.
Okay. Well, you handled my 2 amendments. Discussion. And by the way, we'll be voting on the amendment first and then back to the main motion. So
Actually, they're not amendments, they're conditions.
conditions? Oh, that's right. There were amendments or conditions, right. So we'll just have one vote.
Right.
Discussion. Start out, anybody? If there's nobody.
I'll start.
Okay.
I think this is a no-brainer. I think that I disagree that canopies looming over Broadway are a big problem. The more cars that are covered, the better. I mean, this is an insurance issue to me, maybe not primarily, but in a large part. Insurance is something that we all pay for. If insurance rates are higher because things aren't protected, then they're higher for everybody. And, the more protection we can have, I mean, hail's a huge issue in Colorado, and, insurance rates are going up because of it. And so, to have less loss and more protection is definitely better. I mentioned before I think looking at some of the photos, I'm not sure that the reflectivity is really that big of an issue as far for kind of the heat sink issue I was thinking about. The only concern I have is making sure that these canopies are in good condition, and we don't have the ratty plastic flapping around because they're not being kept up. But it sounds like they have a good plan in place for getting these replaced if they're damaged or, at the end of their useful life. Even as far as the residential issue is concerned, I'd rather look at a uniform a bunch of canopies than I would at a bunch of different colored cars. I think it just looks better. If I were above an auto dealership looking down at that, I'd rather see the canopies. And so I think this is a great idea, and I really actually think the more canopies, the better, because for the reasons I stated earlier. That's it. Thanks.
Go ahead, John. Do you guys have some?
I just had a comment that just the design of the canopies is kind of reminiscent of a structure that's used in the South Pacific called a fala. And they generally have 4 posts and no walls. And they build those as primary dwellings because if they put up a wall, the typhoons blow them down. So that's how they've developed that style. So when you're walking down the streets, you can see right into people's houses. So they kind of look like that, and they're kind of, quaint, and it's a neat kind of architectural style. So I just thought I'd comment that it's reminiscent of a South Pacific housing style, modified slightly, and it's proven to be very weather resistant, and I don't think it's going to attract people trying to camp out under there because they're permeable. So that's it.
I was going to second what Commissioner Bolt said, that I think having a consistent color does eliminate some of that visual clutter of different color cars coming in and out and seeing maybe empty parking spaces. I certainly support protecting the inventory. I'm sure AutoNation, we know they pay taxes, so it's good for them to be able to do business. So anything that I think we can do to help them to do business is a good thing. I'm on the fence about removing the canopies on Broadway. Your comment was intriguing, so I'd like to hear sort of more discussion about that and what other people think about that. But generally in favor of the canopies.
Okay.
Just really a question regarding those canopies along Broadway. It's really hard to tell from the map what that distance is from the road. I mean, I can't really tell. Can anybody else?
I think it's at least 30 feet, because I think the primary parking had to be 30 feet back. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. The other comment is Commissioner Coronado just pulled up a visual of the project, and there are some very large trees along Broadway, as well as it looks like quite a bit of shrubbery. So in terms of impeding the view from Broadway. I really, it doesn't look like it would be highly affected because there are large trees there. So overall, I support the project. Same reasons that we need to help businesses protect their assets so that they continue to be profitable and stay in business. So I don't have any other concerns.
I agree. This is one of the better landscape lots I've seen for a car dealership. I think whatever can be done to preserve the existing landscaping is important. My concern about the lighting, I noticed in the design guidelines there's a maximum SRI, solar reflectance index of 40, which is actually pretty low. And kind of torn by it because I think above 40 you get more reflectance, right? It's a lighter color, which is great for reduction of urban heat island, that type of thing. But when you have lights shining down on it, it reflects more, so that's a negative. So I guess it's a question too why it would be a maximum of 40 and not a minimum of 40 on the SRI index. That's the only concern I have. Otherwise, I'd support the application.
Jason?
Certainly, I appreciate the concerns that commissioners raised about the Broadway frontage, and I do see that as, although it wasn't labeled on the PUD, as more of a vehicle display area. That tends to be where you park the fancier cars. The Google Street View shows one of the late 90s, early 2000s Thunderbird convertible parked along Broadway north of that driveway. So it's obviously intended to be a vehicle display area. And moving the canopies back that single row, I think, will lessen the sort of visual impact from the street. And that's what I've experienced in driving down Arapahoe Road, which is my commute. I drive by a lot of the photos that were shown in the site. As far as hail protection, it might have been nice if they'd gone the Kaiser Permanente on Arapahoe Road and used solar panels, but I understand those are slightly more spendy, so definitely understand the economics there. I think the intent of the lighting prohibition in that condition number 8 was probably meant to prohibit, just adding strings of LED lights or rope lights to attract attention. So hopefully the condition kind of clarifies that that's still prohibited, but that if something is approved through a photometric, that can be incorporated in the canopies. So overall, and as a family that has experienced over $15,000 of hail over 3 events on 2 cars, the importance of these canopies.
I agree. The practicality of the canopies makes complete sense. It's almost surprising it didn't happen sooner, but I suppose if the change of insurance has brought up that issue, then that's why it's changing now. But yes, it's very practical. I am just debating a little bit with making amendment, not to change anything that has been presented, but more in a precedent manner. I really appreciate that you will not be touching any of the trees. I would like to amend, what I'm thinking of in the amendment is, again, like I said, presidential, so that if others look to make this, they won't remove their trees. We saw some pictures from, not here, but other places where they just had the solid block, no trees, nothing. So that would be why I would be looking at this. Again, I know you guys are not moving it, and I greatly appreciate that. So I am going to make an amendment that no trees can be removed to add the canopies. Understanding you said you might need to trim them, so this should not affect that, but just to amend it that no trees be removed for the canopies.
I'll second that.
We do have a second on the amendment. Okay. Well, I'll make my comments and then we'll vote on the amendment. I'm under a dangerous situation of being at the short end of a 6-1 vote here. I'm happy to have the conditions, and I'm hoping that the amendment passes, but I still have problems with the canopies. That's why I was asking about the Littleton standards for canopies citywide, and there are none, and I've been pressing for a few years to get on it and get some regulations. I've taken a lot of discussion and heat about the melting pot tents that are blocking the Carnegie Library and are really, quite frankly, structures in front of the building. I think that these canopies are structures. They should count against the floor area ratio, regardless of what the centennial regulations are. I don't think that, I think they are structures and should be considered to be so and count against this 0.25 to 1 gross floor area ratio. With that said, any discussion on the amendment?
Yeah, I'll just say, this is something I was hoping to add anyway, that, several people have mentioned that this is a well-landscaped lot, and I would agree. I mean, even looking at, on the PD here, you can see some landscaping put in here, but it's quite much more extensive. There's a huge green space in front of what would be those canopies along Broadway with trees all along there and really ringing the entire property. So, yeah, I mean, I can see a situation where they might have to remove a tree here or there or not have a canopy. But I'm in general agreement that I think landscaping in general should not be reduced. I guess for me, I would rather be a little more flexible and say any reduction in or any need to alter landscaping due to the the installation of a canopy be counteracted, is that the right word, with landscaping elsewhere. I mean, I'm generally in favor of more landscaping is better than less anyway, but that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I hear your concern. According to the applicant, that they're not making any landscaping changes, so this should not affect their project, is my understanding.
Right, but like you said, I mean, just generally, I think
What was that, President?
anybody making any changes should replace landscaping that they've gotten rid of, either on their site or elsewhere. That's, maybe that's a.
Well, having dealt with the city on a couple of projects in Littleton of commercial, they are rabid if you're taking out a tree. Pretty much they're going to ask you to put in 3 trees. It's pretty tough. And sometimes a tree removal to block the view of the building, they don't care. So they're quite rabid in protection of trees in Littleton.
Okay.
Got to vote on the amendment.
Yes. A vote on the amendment already? Okay.
All right, the vote on the amendment passes unanimously.
Good. Back to the main motion. Any other discussion on the main motion?
I'll just throw my 2 cents worth in. Obviously, there's no residential effects here. This is strictly commercial. I like the fact that there's no signage on the canopies. The colors are muted, so they're, relatively speaking, fairly innocuous. They're not too high. They're well below the tree height lines, and I thought they blended in well on the pictures where we had a lot of trees and so forth and so on. Support the lighting issues and the canopy issue on the single row on Broadway. And other commissioners have said it, and I'll just chime in as well. I think this is an effective solution to a legitimate business problem that's only going to get worse. I work in Lakewood, and after the hailstorm came through, the big one last summer, the Stevenson dealership at Colfax in Indiana, I think was out of business for multiple weeks. And there's just, as I said, I think this represents an effective solution to a legitimate business problem that we don't have any compelling arguments against. So I'll support the motion as amended.
And my last comment is that my beef is with the city not having regulations at all for canopies, basically. And secondly, it probably doesn't concern any other commissioner, but it's obvious to me that these canopies will be moving their way up Broadway to the rest of our multitude of auto dealerships, so get ready for more. There are some that are in the B zone districts, others are in PD districts. So with that said, anything else? Time to vote. It's been a while.
The motion with conditions as amended passes with 1 against.
Thank you. Good luck. Okay, next up is comments and reports. Community Development Director, our newly minted Community Development Director, any comments? Staff report?
I guess one thing, I don't think we introduced Jordan. Jordan is filling in for Steve. He is on a leave of absence for a little bit. So this is Jordan.
I'm Jordan Lubeck. I'm filling in tonight. There will be other individuals, most likely from Kissinger and Fellman, who are Ken and other people are going to be helping out as well, but I'm filling in tonight. And Gabrielle is also with Kissinger and Fellman as well.
Just
Anything
to have that. And then the Envision Littleton process still continues. We'll have a joint session on March 12th. So I hope you have that all on your calendars.
That the 12th of March.
12th of March is the next one. And then I don't know if you all saw the announcement in regards to the speaker series that's going to be kicking off. Did you guys get invitations to that? So just have those dates on the calendar. And I'm going to let Mike add anything else.
Chairman Runicki, Mike Sutherland, Planning Manager. You did mention the melting pot, and I wanted to give you a quick update on that. That will be, the owners of the melting pot have proposed an amendment to the view easement that protects the Carnegie Library. That will be going to City Council on March 5th. And I believe it will be going to the Historic Preservation Board for recommendation on February 27th.
Show up to those meetings.
Yeah, so, yeah. So view corridors doesn't go to Planning Commission.
So it's an amendment to an existing agreement. If that is approved, then they would need to go for a COA to the a certificate of appropriateness. Thank you.
From HPD.
You don't know your own acronyms here?
Yeah, I know. Well, there's a lot of those. And then if that were approved, it would have to go through a site plan. So that potentially could be administrative, although if for any reason that was denied, it could be appealed to Planning Commission.
Okay.
And then also just one more reminder that February 25th is when your next scheduled meeting would be, but we've already canceled that as we had no pending business.
So we have 4 weeks between now and our next meeting. Okay.
We'll see you in March.
Okay. Let's see. Just one comment. I got a letter from Debbie Brinkman. There was a group of stakeholders and a couple of planning commissioners. We were involved a couple months ago at a meeting to discuss the traffic study on Santa Fe and its effect on, what would you call it, the river north area, the west side of Santa Fe, south of, well, including Echo Star, is that what they call themselves lately? Okay. We are having another meeting later on this month at Angelo's down in the valley. And there was quite a group of business owners and city people, et cetera, at that first meeting. And so I can keep you all informed, or you could show up if you wanted, I'm sure, and listen in. So that's coming up. I also got some, let's see, some minutes of the last CC, what is the C4 group that's meeting, the advisory committee for the comp plan, and I'll get those all out to you. Staff did do some minutes. It's not very much. It was an introductory meeting, but there's some materials included that I need to get out to all of you. So I'll be doing that hopefully tomorrow. So that's all I have. Any other commissioner comment? Sure.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys all got the email about the DRCOG Citizens Academy. That looked really interesting. I think the application is due March 8th, and then it's April and May for 7 weeks, 6 to 9 on a Thursday night. So there's 80 spaces, so you might want to look at that. To me, again, it looked really intriguing. And the only other thing would be, again, Mark's brought this up too, but Littleton creating its own hail canopy regulations for what suit our city would probably be a good thing to be looking at.
We have been doing little snippet changes to the zoning code, maybe, 5 or 6 in the last 8, 9 months. This would be a nice one to get going on, please. Get ahead of the game a little bit.
I know we've got sort of a list of code amendments that are kind of running through the pipe, as you've noted. We'll definitely take those comments to heart. And I know there's plans for a more comprehensive code update after the comprehensive plan goes through. So.
Okay. Anything else, Bruce?
Mentioned the Carnegie, what was the old Carnegie Library, and this is actually sort of an interesting piece of information that we don't really deal with all that frequently, but memory serves, when that building was sold by the city, there was a view corridor easement that was attached to the deed of trust. And essentially what that means is it gives the city the right to control the view corridor down Main Street against what's now the melting pot. And that goes with, it's in the title work at the county. So we don't really see these things. This is, as far as I'm aware, this is the only one like it in the city. There might be others, but I'm not aware of them. And it's interesting because it does point up the fact that this was a significant historic property, and people wanted to make sure that the view corridor was maintained accordingly. And that when those canopies or those umbrella tables were approved, they did have to go through Historic Preservation Board for one, and might have had to go to council as well to get those signed off. So it's just sort of an interesting point of historical significance that might be of interest to planning commissioners. So there you have it.
Okay. Anything else? We are adjourned. Thank you.